Hi, I'm Robert Joseph, and in this video, we're going to continue our sampling of the stitches of the Brothers Sewing Machine LX3817, and we're going to sample stitches 12 through 17, and these are the stitches that I call the utility stitches because they actually have a real function behind them. Of course, the straight stitches have a function to sew a seam, but these ones have a little bit more functionality as far as hemming, applying elastics, and other uses. So that's why I call them the utility stitches. Now you should know that stitches 12 through 17 should be kind of broken up, but I'm going to do all of the stitches just so we see what they look like flat on a piece of fabric so that we can identify them. Now each of these stitches I will have, well, I won't have separate videos for each stitch, but I'll do separate videos for the application use of stitches like 12 and 14. Now 12 and 14 are your blind hemming stitches, and I'm really not sure why they didn't put those stitches right next to each other. We have number 13, which is between 14 and 13, is an elastic application stitch. It's actually a 3-step zigzag. So in this video, I'm actually going to do 12 and 14 together, and then I'll do 13, and then I will move on to 15, which is an overlock stitch, which I will talk a little bit about that. I'm not sure I would actually use that stitch to finish a seam. Once I get to actually the video for that stitch separately, I'll probably do the elastic and the 15, 13, and 15 together. But don't hold me to that. We'll find out once I actually get there. Just going back to the overlock stitch is because I'm not a fan of the way it looks and feels after the stitch has been completed. So, and then I will do 16 and 17, which seems like more of a decorative stitches. So we will kind of play around with those in their own separate video. But in this video, we're gonna flat stitch all of them, 12 through 17, and we'll have a look at what they look like, okay? So, and then of course we will put them in a notebook to sample for future review. So with that, let's get to the demo. Okay, so we're going to work with what I call the utility stitches. These are stitches numbered 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. So there are 6 stitches that are going to be on this. And for this exercise, just to show what the stitches look like, we're going to ignore what their use is, although I will explain that to you. We're going to start with stitch number 12, which is a blind hemming stitch. And of course, you wouldn't just stitch on top of the fabric. There's an actual process for how you get that done. Now, this machine, with the accessories that comes with it, it does not come with a blind stitch foot attachment. You can buy one. I'm not sure how much they cost, but just go into the Brother site and search for blind hem foot and make sure that it works with this actual model. I'm going to show you, so don't worry, I'm going to actually show you how each of these stitches works in real life or real application. But for this exercise, we just want to see what the stitches look like. So we're going to ignore the application. But for stitches 12 through 17, I'm actually going to show you practical application of the use and how you can use those stitches in your sewing. So for 12 and 14, I'm going to put 12 and 14 next to each other because they are actually, you use them the same way. So 12 is a blind hemming stitch for wovens, that's fabrics that don't really stretch. And 14 is a blind hem stitch for knits, which is a fabric that stretches a lot. So, and there's a reason for that. So on the 12, as you'll see, and I'll explain the difference of the 2 stitches, we'll see that very clearly. One has a straight stitch and the other has a zigzag stitch, okay? So I'm putting those 2 together because they're used similarly. And then I'm going to come back and do 13, which is an elastic stitch, a 3-step zigzag. And then 15 I'll do, which is their overcast stitch to clean finish and edge, well, as clean as it can be. And then 16 and 17 I really consider decorative stitches. Anyway, so let's get started with 12. Now we start the same way we started all of our other stitches. And we left off at the number 11 stitch, so I have to go and move the needle over to the 12 position, and notice, see, my needle is over to the left. That's where we ended the last video. If you haven't watched the other videos, go back and watch. There's a whole, this is a whole playlist. So I'm just going to take the camera off the tripod, just like I've done before. So we're currently at 11, and I need to come over to 12. So just click. Oh, that one's a little tougher. I don't know why it's harder to get over there. We're moving over to more utility stitches, so it's kind of a jump from over there. Or maybe I have too much lotion on my hands. Okay, so now we are at 12 with that mark, okay? So get this lined back up. All right. Now we have our longer threads here. Line up this first line. And notice that the needle is over a little bit from the center, and that's okay because our stitch, to make this overcast, it's going to stitch a few stitches and then it's going to come over this way and grab fabric and then stitch. And you'll see how that works. But I'm going to go ahead and just line it up. I can actually line the needle up. It's a little off from that center. It doesn't really matter for this purpose. We just want to try to sew straight. Okay, so we're lined up there. Now I can put the presser foot down. My tension is also at 4, if you were wondering. I'm leaving it at 4 for now because we don't really need to mess with the tension. Okay, and so now I'm going to sew. I am going to back stitch. We'll see how that works. Okay. Okay, so you saw that it jumped over there. That just means it had done that stitch. Okay, so watch. I'm going at kind of a medium pace. So it does a few stitches and then it jumps over. And once I get to, I'm going to actually end here, back stitch, bring the needle up, and everything is in the right position. Lift the presser foot and take the fabric out. Okay, so this is what our stitch looks like. So you can see, and I'm going to count here, see if the focus is a little bit better. I'm going to count here. It looks like about 4 straight stitches, and then it jumps over like a zigzag stitch, and then it comes back and does another 4 stitches and jumps back over. So what this does is you fold the fabric a special way, and I'm going to walk you through that in one of the later videos. You fold the fabric in such a way that these 4 stitches here grab the hem allowance. And what this does, after it does those 4 stitches, then it jumps over and it grabs the actual garment fabric. And then it comes back to the hem allowance, and you're only stitching on the hem allowance, and then this jumps back over and grabs the actual garment fabric at this point. And so that's what they're considering a blind hem. Now, of course, we don't have the fabric folded the correct way to see it, but we just wanted to see what the stitch looked like, and this is good to have in our kit just as reference. And we will label these later. Now I'm going to do the stitch 14, which is for knits, and I will actually have knit fabric in when I do the blind hem little tutorial. You'll see that. Just look for it in the playlist. If it's not there yet, that just means it's coming. Okay, so what I need to do is I need to switch my dial up, and so I have to go past 13. We're going to come back to 13 after 14, and I don't know why they didn't put 14 next to 12 when it does the same thing. So I'm going to switch this over, and I'm now switched up to 14, matched up with that notch. Get the camera set up here again, and the stitch is going to look very similar. Whoops. To 12, but I wanted these 2 stitches to be next to each other. All right, so start everything the exact same way. Back stitch. And I'm going at a medium pace. And I'm just guiding the fabric. And I'm coming here, I'm just gonna backstitch real quick. There we go. And the needle's pretty close there, but I'm gonna take it all the way around, bring everything back up into the proper spot. Like that. And so here is what our stretch stitch, our knit blind hem looks like. And you can see the zigzag. And the reason we have little zigzags between the big zigzag, this is the one that's going to catch the actual body fabric, and these little ones are the ones that's going to catch the hem of the fabric. And so the reason we have these little zigzags is because knits need to stretch. So think if you're doing the bottom of a legging, that's going to be actually smaller than your body. So that hem fabric still needs to stretch. Everything needs to stretch while you're putting it on and wearing it. So whereas this stitch on a knit, it would not stretch. Those straight stitch is locking the fabric in. So just be aware of that. So I wanted these two, because they do the blind hem, I wanted these two to be together. So now let's do this elastic stitch. That's what number 13 is. So here I'm going to go back to 13. And if we look at this closely, see if I can, there we go. You see three little stitches in that zigzag right there. Okay, so that's what it's going to do. And what that does, having those three little stitches in each of those lines of the zigzag, is that it really secures the elastic while still allowing the elastic to stretch. And you'll see this a lot in swimwear. So let me put this back on the tripod. I think I need to zoom in or zoom back out and line that up again. All right. And we're going to start off exactly the same way as all the other stitches. Even though we've got it to the 13, I'm going to put the needle in the center there. You see it's a little bit off there, if you can see that. Don't worry about that too much. I'm going to hold these. I think I got a little extra thread under these, so I'm going to hold that down right there while I start. Backstitch. Now we can... So when you see that it's jumping back and forth, those are the three stitches. So if you hear people say a three-step zigzag, that's what this is. The book is calling this the elastic stitch. So I'm coming up to the end and I'm going to backstitch. Bring everything up to the top. And then take this out. Okay. So there's our three-step zigzag stitch. That looks very nice. Okay, now understand that this probably won't work for anything. Well, you know, you might be able to get this to work with a 1/4 inch wide elastic, but this would be great for 3/8 inch, which I use for the swimwear, or a 1/2 inch elastic going down the center. And I will show you the practical application and use of this stitch in a later video. Okay, so moving on, we have a stitch that I know a lot of people talk about because they don't have the money or the funds, or they don't want to buy an overlock machine or a serger machine, which actually cuts the fabric and finishes the edge of the fabric. This next stitch, number 15, is what they call the Overcast Stitch. So I need to switch it here from 14 over to 15, right there. So that means, unlike these ones, see where the point goes over to the left? So the point where it's grabbing the fabric is going over to the right. And then you have a stitch in between each one of those jumps. Get this back on the tripod, this lined up here. And we'll start this the same way we start everything else. Looks like I started a little bit higher on some of the other stitches, so needle down. I'm actually lining my line up with the little notch on the foot there that we saw before. So I'm going to backstitch. So I'm on the 15. Let's have a look at what this looks like. I'm gonna come up and backstitch. All right. So here is our overcast. Now, if we were doing this on a seam, this would come over to the very edge of the fabric, this point here, while this stitch would go into more the middle of that seam allowance, okay? And I will show you the practical application for this. Now, I would probably use this with the double layers of fabric, but we'll test it out on a pressed open seam as well, okay? To see how we actually like this look or like that finish. But this is the overcast stitch. Now we're going to move on to what I consider decorative stitches, although the book calls them double action stitches, and we'll test both of those out to see if we actually need the seam. So we're going to be working with stitches 16 and 17 here, and this one looks like it's a little bit broken, and then this one has kind of a little bit of a detail. So I'm going to switch over to the 16, and I'm going to, when we do the practical application for 12 through 17, I'm actually going to try to see if we actually need to actually sew a seam first, or if we can just butt the fabric up together and then sew the seam over it. So we'll test those out, okay? But we're just going to see what the stitches look like when we sew them directly onto some fabric. That to focus, starting the same way we started everything else. We're on 16, put the needle down, press our foot down, and we'll backstitch. And we're going to backstitch. Make sure everything is in the right place. Lift the presser foot. Take the fabric out. Okay. So this is our 16. It looks very similar to the elastic stitch, with the exception that it has one stitch that goes across before the two. It looks like two stitches up, one stitch across, two stitches down, and then another one across. So this is basically an S kind of shape that you could do as a decorative stitch on top of your seamed fabric, and that's what they're kind of telling you in the book. So let's do the last one, stitch 17. Which looks a lot more, whoops, I just took my, let me thread up and then we'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I accidentally pulled the thread out of the needle. So we'll do the last stitch, number 17. I'm going to show you that. I'm going to click right over there to 17, one more. Okay, so this is the last stitch. Okay. And that looks a little bit, let me see if I can focus. Sorry, I'm moving around a lot. This stitch looks a lot more decorative than this stitch. But again, we'll show these on a practical application. Okay, so let's get this last stitch done so we can just see what it looks like. And it will actually be nice to have these in a notebook so we can just refer to them as far as what they look like. So I was starting the same way I start everything. Line up that needle. Press our foot down, and we're going to backstitch. Okay, and then we will sew. And I'm going to speed this up. I'm going to go and see how fast we can go with this stitch. This is all the way, the pedal's all the way down and backstitch. And stop. I wanted to see how fast it could go. Sometimes when you're doing these decorative stitches, the machine likes to hop around. I have a really sturdy table, but if you're on just like a portable table, you might get some bounce. But I wanted to see if there were any skipped stitches. Okay. And so here's our number 17. This is a little bit more decorative. You see there's a little bit of notching here It looks kind of like a heart monitor machine a little bit. So that looks kind of pretty. So depending on what you're doing, if you're a quilter, you might like these basic decorative stitches to top stitch your quilt blocks, and that's probably how I'm going to do a practical application with these ones. So I wanted to see how fast I could go to see if it would skip any stitches. So sometimes on these decorative stitches, when you go really fast, it tends to skip stitches, but this did really, really well. In fact, the machine sounded really nice. And that's one of the things that actually changed my mind about this machine, was that how well it sewed and how sturdy the machine was. So that's why I chose to do these videos, because for the money, I think this is a great machine. So now I'm actually going to press this. I'm going to label these, and then we're going to put them in our notebook. Okay, so here we are. So we've finished doing the what I call the utility stitches. That was stitches 12 through 17 here on the dial. And I call them utility stitches because they are actually used to do actual detail work, such as the blind hems and then attaching elastic, or the overcast, which is to finish the seam edges, the seam allowance edges. And then there are two other, which I would consider decorative stitches. And I've actually already labeled them all. This is how I labeled them. So I have the numbers up here at the top, and then I have named them here. I have the two blind stitches, woven and knit. And then here is the elastic, and I also call it a 3-step zigzag. You'll hear people call this the 3-step zigzag. It's kind of a tongue twister. And then this is the overlock or overcast stitch. And then here in the book, in the manual, these two, number 16 is called the double action stitch. They don't give a reason for why it's called the double action stitch. I just call it a nice decorative stitch. And then the 17 they are calling a bridging stitch, which I also consider a decorative stitch, but it seems like you could bridge or bind two pieces of fabric together with just that top stitch. So again, these stitches I'm going to do separate videos for on how you would be using them in the application wise of a garment or any other thing that you might be sewing. So don't worry. So if you don't see those videos up in the playlist for the Brother LX3817 yet, they will be coming out very soon. So I'm trying to get all of these videos done in a reasonable amount of time. Okay, so now this is ready for me to mount onto some cardstock. I've got my cardstock, and then once I've got that done, I will actually cover it with my sheet protector and then put it in a notebook. So all I need to do, I've got my magic tape. It's the matte kind. You can write on this. That's the important part. So I'm just going to lay it here, center it, and I'm going to tape it at the top. Now I don't like to tape it all the way around. I just like to tape at the top where it will be hanging down as it's going to be in the notebook. So I like to put it this way. So if I flip it up, I can actually see the underside, and I can see what the under stitching is going to look like as well. Say, especially if some of these are going to be topical decorative stitches, you may just want to make sure that the stitch doesn't look too funky on the other side if it's going to be like on the back of a quilt or back of a pot holder or something like that. So I just like to make sure that the back side looks as nice as the front. So that's why I like to not tape down the bottom part. So now I just need to slip this inside my sheet protector, and then I'm ready to put it in my notebook. Now, you keep hearing me say notebook in the very beginning of this playlist. When I did the introduction to the machine and the setup, I told you about the notebook that I have for Apparel Arts Academy. Those are actually 3 different playlists for those, and those videos are all this is free on YouTube. It's all free. So if you look in the Apparel Arts Academy playlists, there's level 0, level 1, and level 2. All those are free, and they are sewing samples. Now, I will eventually be teaching you how to sew garments, but sewing samples is really the key to being a successful sewer. So within those, I go into depth on how to sew all kinds of sewing details like zippers and different seam types and finishes and things like that. And I create a whole notebook. And this is how I taught college level classes. So all my students made notebooks, and we had over 100 samples within that notebook for that one class. So I showed you the notebook in the first video of this playlist. So go back to that one, the introduction to this machine, and I will explain the notebook in there. Otherwise, all you need to do is find a note binder book with the 3-ring notebook, and then you can put this in there, and all of your samples will be in one place for you to go back to and refer to and review. Okay, so that concludes the stitches. I know that I'm going to be doing the how did I put it? The how these stitches are used. So the practical application of these stitches. So look out for those videos, or those videos might be coming up depending on when I get those done. Okay. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe. I do sewing videos pretty regularly now. So if you haven't subscribed, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification button to get notified whenever I have a new sewing video up. So again, thank you and be well.